Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator, congratulations on your nomination.
Thank you.
In 2009, when you became the ranking Republican on this committee, you were interviewed about how you would approach the committee's work and nominations specifically. You said that Democrats should expect you to be fair because you had been through this process yourself back in 1986, and you felt that back then the committee had distorted your record. You said that moving forward, quote, "We're not going to misrepresent any nominee's record, and we're not going to lie about it," unquote. And we certainly don't want to do that to our colleague. But I also think it's fair to expect that sitting before us today that you're not going to misrepresent your own record. That's fair to say, right?
That is fair.
Good. Now, in that same interview, you said, quote, "I filed 20 or 30 civil rights cases to desegregate schools and political organizations and county commissions when I was United States Attorney." So 20 or 30 desegregation cases. Did I misread that quote?
I believe that's what I've been quoted as saying, and I suspect I said that.
Okay, now that was 2009, but in November of this year, your office said, quote, "When Senator Sessions was U.S. Attorney, he filed a number of desegregation lawsuits in Alabama, not 20 or 30 this time, but a number." So tell me, did you file 20 or 30 desegregation cases, or is it some other number?
Well, thank you, Senator Franken. It is important for us to be accurate. The records don't show that there were 20 or 30 actually filed cases. Some of the cases involve multiple defendants and multiple parties, like a school board and a county commission being sued for racial discrimination, things of that nature. But the number would be less than that, as we've looked at. So
what do you think would have caused you to say
I don't know.
that you filed 20 or 30 desegregation?
Well, we had cases going throughout my district, and some of them were started before I came and continued after I left. Some of them were brought and then settled promptly. And so it was extraordinarily difficult, actually, and I was surprised to get a record by checking the docket sheets to find out exactly how many cases were involved. I heard one lawyer from the Department of Justice agreed with that large number, but the record doesn't justify it.
The questionnaire you submitted for today asks you to list and describe the, quote, 10 most significant litigated matters you personally handled. Personally handled. And among the cases that you listed that you personally handled are 3 voting rights cases and a desegregation case. Last week, I should note, 3 attorneys who worked at DOJ and who actually brought 3 of the 4 cases wrote an op-ed piece in which they say, quote, "We can state categorically that Sessions had no substantive involvement in any of them." Now, you originally said that you personally handled 3 of these cases, but these lawyers say that you had no substantive involvement. Chairman Grassley, I would ask that op-ed from last Tuesday's Washington Post be entered into the record.
Without objection, it will be entered.
Are they distorting your record here?
Yes. In fact, one of the writers there, Mr. Hebert, spent a good bit of time in my office. He said I supported him in all the cases he brought, that I was more supportive than almost any other U.S. attorney, and that I provided office space. I signed the complaints that he brought. And as you know, may know, Senator Franken, when a lawyer signs a complaint, He's required to affirm that he believes in that complaint and supports that complaint and supports that legal action, which I did. We sued.
So that's your personal involvement, was that your name was on it?
Well, look, you can dispute the impact or the import of the questionnaire. Another attorney, Paul Hancock, who brought cases in our district, said, well, the Attorney General claims credit for the cases in the Department of Justice. He saw nothing wrong with my claiming that this was a case that I had handled.
Okay, two of the...
So you can disagree with that, but those cases
I want to get through this,
have
and
my
I don't want you to...
signature on the...
I want to get through
on
this.
the docket sheet, my name is listed number one on the as the attorney
look,
for the case.
I'm not a lawyer. I'm one of the few members of this committee who didn't go to law school, and usually I get by just fine, but it seems to me that a lawyer, if a lawyer has just his name added to a document here or a filing there, that lawyer would be misrepresenting his record if he said he was personally handled these cases. Two of the lawyers who wrote the op-ed have also submitted testimony for today's hearing, Mr. Jerry Hebert and Mr. Joe Rich. Mr. Hebert says, quote, says he, quote, litigated personally 2 of the 4 cases you listed. He said, I can state with absolute certainty that Mr. Sessions did not participate personally in either. Mr. Rich worked on 1 of the 4 cases you listed. He said, quote, I never met him at that time nor any other time, and he had no input to the case. These represent 3 of the 4 cases that you claimed that were among the top 10 cases that you personally handled. Now, in your 1986 questionnaire, you used phrases like, quote, I prepared and tried the case as sole counsel, and, quote, I was the lead prosecutor on this case, assisted by so-and-so. Why didn't you use the same level of detail in your 2016 questionnaire?
And looking at this questionnaire, we decided that was an appropriate response since it was a major historic cases in my office. Let me just reply, Senator Franken, in this fashion. Mr. Hebert, when in 1986, when he testified at my hearing, said, quote, we have had difficulty with several U.S. attorneys in cases we have wanted to bring. We have not experienced that difficulty in the cases I have handled with Mr. Sessions. In fact, quite the contrary, close quote. He goes on to say, I've had occasion numerous times to ask for his assistance and guidance. I have been able to go to him, and he has had an open door policy. And I have taken advantage of that and found him cooperative. And that is an accurate statement. I don't know Mr. Rich. Perhaps he handled a case that I never worked with. He goes on to say,
well,
quote,
one of the cases
no, I want
listed,
you've raised this question, Senator
one of the
Franken.
cases that you listed was a case that Mr. Rich handled. So if you don't know him, it's hard for me to believe that you personally handled it.
Well, when I found that these cases, I had been supportive of.
Filed.
Sure, I was. Mr. Hebert says, quote, and yet I have needed Mr. Sessions' help in those cases, and he has provided that help every step of the way. In fact, I would say that my experience with Mr. Sessions has led me to believe that I have received more cooperation from him, more active involvement from him, because I have called upon him, close quote. Quote, I have worked side by side with him on some cases in the sense that I have had to go to him for some advice, close quote.
In some cases. We're not necessarily the ones you listed.
Well, look,
okay,
this was 30 years ago, and my memory was of this nature, and my memory was my support for those cases.
Your memory. Okay. Look, I'm one of the few members of this committee who's not a lawyer. The chairman, the ranking aren't. But when I hear I filed a case, you know, I don't know some of the parlance It might have a special meaning in legal parlance, but to me, as a layman, it sounds to me like filed means I led the case or I supervised the case. It doesn't mean that my name was on it. And it seems to me, look, I'll close, Mr. Chairman, setting aside any political or ideological differences that you or I may have, DOJ is facing real challenges, whether it's protecting civil rights or defending national security, and our country needs an Attorney General who doesn't misrepresent or inflate their level of involvement on any given issue.
I hear
So I consider this serious stuff, as I know that you would if you were in my position.
Well, you are correct, Senator Franken. We need to be accurate in what we say. When this issue was raised, I did do a supplemental that said I provided assistance and guidance to Civil Rights Division attorneys, had an open door policy with them, and cooperated with them on these cases, close quote. I signed them, I supported cases, and attempted to be as effective as I could be in helping them be successful in these historic cases. I did feel that they were the kind of cases that were national in scope and deserved to be listed on the form. If I'm in error, I apologize to you. I don't think I was.
Well, you couldn't find 20 or 30 desegregation cases that you stated you had participated in, and it don't sound like you personally handled cases that you said you personally.
Well, I was on a
Thank you.
radio interview without any records, and that was my memory at the time.
I think you answered the question.